later since we have a longer episode to do. But the first thing to talk about, so Denim's coming back.
Is it really?
I figured that was a curveball you weren't expecting since we were going to start somewhere else.
How much are we talking?
So I got a few like they're like the heavy denim shirts.
Are we
that
talking
you wear
about double denim?
Yeah, double denim.
Oh my life.
So I got the like I'm stepping it up because as I'm heading towards 50, I can't do anything but hold on to my youth.
And you think double denim's the answer? I look forward to the next episode.
I was almost going to wear it, but then I had to get it cleaned because I've been wearing it so much.
I'm already regretting this conversation.
No, it is great. It is great because you go back to like the early 90s and you're like the stone-washed double denim.
I remember
and you're
those.
like, this was the high peak of fashion. The only thing that we're missing is like the cuffs on the bottom of jeans, that like the sweatpant cuffs. I
There
feel
we
like,
go.
yeah.
Fashion tips from Cognition Drift every week.
Yes. Yeah, well, and then so I got to have the denim top and then you do the barrel jeans.
Okay.
So it's like that clip of Steve Buscemi. I don't even know where it's from, but where he's like, I'm in high school like you kids.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yes. This is all I can think
love that
about.
clip.
But before we went on the air, you got to see me dropping a few notes to my team. And we were talking about that I struggle to type now because I've moved to dictation software and typing seems so painful to me at this point. Right. And it's actually a consideration of when I use my mobile phone versus when I use my laptop, because I can use the software on my mobile phone. But every time I do it and switch to that keyboard, because it's a keyboard, I have to then switch to the app, give permissions, and move back. Now that 2 seconds or 3 seconds seems like it should be a gimme for what is about to be a massive amount of time savings, but it really angers me. So now I just drop myself a note on my task list and then do all the dictation when I get back to my computer.
That's really interesting. I think honestly that reflects background. I think so. I really struggle to engage with voice activated with dictation. I've always had troubles with it on the mobile, on laptop. I've never really got with that.
Okay, so yes. So this is not, this is why it's relevant to the podcast. And I'm sorry, it's not normal dictation. It's AI-enabled dictation, which I never liked normal dictation. People were always like, use a piece of software. I never liked it. But with this, it cuts out the filler words, like the like if I'm thinking through something and I need to send a paragraph message, but I'm just thinking through it as I'm dictating. And then if you start a sentence, fumble, and then start again, it most oftentimes will just correct that for you.
Oh, that's quite nice.
Because
that's the problem I have with it, is that I don't think in linear paths. I tend to go quite circular. But I have the advantage of having been a coder for a long time. I type pretty damn fast, about as fast as I speak. So I haven't got that block of saying, well, it's fast for me to talk. It's not. It's quite often it's fast for me to type because I think as I'm typing. It's about the same sort of pace. But
I type slower than I speak. I'd be curious if that's correct for you. It might just be one of those things you think versus what actually is.
I shouldn't admit these things, but I am sad enough to say that there are times when I've gone online to do typing competitions against people because the speed at which I type, I think I'm pretty quick. And I go, yeah, I am pretty quick. So you do it because when you code, you get into rhythms and touch typing is just natural. But then if you keep it up, you kind of maintain at that pace and you start to affect not just how you output, but how you think as well. So they're both sort of referential, I think.
How you think is a really interesting one. What I've noticed with using the dictation software, and by the way, it's called WhisperFlow.
Yeah, I know.
For anybody who wants to use it. What I've noticed is I do have to do a little pre-thought before I dictate. So there is a little bit of setup there. When I type, because I'm slower, I stop at the end of a sentence and then I might think, okay, what are the 3 bullets that need to come after this? Or something like that.
That's not a bad thing. That's thoughtful.
No, it's not a bad thing, but it's I'm learning to use different ones in different contexts. But it's interesting because it's what thinking do you use in what context?
Yeah, I like that.
I could tie this back to something I want to talk about later. But instead of that, where I want to go is really cool keyboards, because we're just going to go all over today.
Steel series. It's all Steel series.
What is Steel series?
They're a good keyboard, really good keyboard.
Not Ducky?
I don't know Ducky. Do I know Ducky? I might do it.
I use Keychron.
Okay.
So Keychron is like they're mechanical keyboards,
Yeah.
right? So they're external. So I have like you, the monitor at home and everything. And
You wish you had a monitor like me.
I do. You have a ridiculous one.
I might get another one.
I do want another one. I do, like it is. I need to stop spending money on watches and fancy dinners and just invest in a monitor.
That's my watch. That's my monitor.
But I remember you were talking touch typing. And I remember at one point when I was working at Microsoft, I walked into this guy's room and you have the split keyboards. He had a fully split keyboard.
Yeah, my wife has one of those.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, like fully split.
I hate it. Whenever I have to use it, it drives me crazy. But you get used to it, I think.
And that's the thing. And not only did he have a fully split keyboard, like two different pieces.
They're horrible things.
But he had them at the side of his chair.
Go away. What's wrong
so
with
he
you
could
people?
just sit and type. And I was just blown away by this. Okay. It was one of the coolest things working at Microsoft.
That's probably very good ergonomically, to be fair. That's really good.
Yeah, exactly. Because he could just sit up straight
Don't
and
give me
type.
ideas. Yeah, okay.
And it was great working at Microsoft because most people at that time had their own office. Mm-hmm. And so everybody set up their office in the way that worked for them. Like my office, I moved everything out. I had a couch in there and I went to Home Depot, like the store in the US, to get all your home fix-it stuff. Mm-hmm. And I got massive full wall whiteboards.
Yeah, okay.
And then I just did one wall, whiteboards, couch.
That's what I missed.
And that was my.
It was a big whiteboard. I should.
Yeah. And then I put up track lighting. And man, that office was a great office. Damn it! What? And I missed that. Now I sit in corporate hot seats.
But that's the thing. So I think our standard way of working now is, like you say, call center style hot seats, or you work from home. And I think most of us invest in our home environment to make it conducive to the best way we work. And then you go into the office and go, okay, I kind of like seeing people and working with people is really great, but this environment sucks.
Well, and that's a big thing with Sapient right now is we have our RTO, return to office policy. And the thing is, you walk in and most people have invested heavily in their home offices. Mm-hmm. And you come in and now you just have sort of not the cheapest, but cheap monitors that are fairly small, not the best resolution. You're typing on your laptop. You don't have a premium setup because you're supposed to be in hot seats. Mm-hmm. What I've done, and I think this is a byproduct just of my level because I can, is I've taken over a desk and I've said, this is my desk now. Yeah. And I've done a setup that mirrors my setup at home. So I come into work and it's the same setup.
That's very smart.
Although at work, I do have a better keyboard. It's a different type of, the same mechanical keyboard, but a different switch. And it feels just so buttery smooth. It feels nice. But people around me, it's also a Keychron. I forget what color, like if it's cherry or brown or whatever the switches are.
I love cherry switches, but they're loud. They're really loud.
So people around me hate me.
Then there's the keyboard.
Yeah. So I have my headphones on, so I can't hear anything, but I'm just there. And people are like, dude.
Yeah, Janet says the same thing about my keyboard. I don't hear it because I've got noise cancelling headphones on, but it drives her crazy. Particularly if I'm particularly passionate at the time and typing quickly.
So I'm trying to figure out how to move this into a set of topics. And I actually wrote down topics today to discuss since we have more time. But that aspect I was talking about earlier of how do you think when you are speaking versus how do you think when you are typing? And that different level of thinking, how you construct your thoughts in conversation. You know, for example, if you've ever actually taken a podcast like this and read the transcript back, which you probably have plenty of times, it does not read like an email or an essay. It reads like a conversation. So they're two different things. And where I'm going with this is how you think in different mediums. And the reason that's interesting is last week you talked about that you were a builder. And this was just what you did. And even if you didn't have this job and you weren't doing this thing, you would be a builder. And since then, I've been listening to like the last 6 episodes of Lenny's podcast, which has several people from Anthropic on. And there's 2 things that they say. One is everybody now has to be a builder. And I'm curious on this because the second one is what becomes more important now is judgment. And what I had written down to talk about is you want to be a builder. I don't necessarily want to be a builder. I want to be a thinker. And that's that judgment stuff. I don't really care about building, but I can, right? I've built now my own software. but I care about the thinking part.
Because I see that in our interactions as well. You are focused on, it's a different focus. I think we've got a group of three of us at the moment that talk a lot about it, and two of us are very driven to build, but you're very focused on the positioning and the strategy and how it connects to users and how we're thinking about the products. And I think that's a very interesting take. It's a very good balance for us as a group.
Well, the fact that last week we talked that you had no clue how I used Cowork, and it is so different than how you use Claude. Right, because you're like, I don't even use Cowork, and I'm like, Cowork is what I mostly use.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think we can learn. I think that's the thing, isn't it? You steal from everybody, steal what works for them, and see if it works for you, and evolve it, tweak it, and try it out, and that's how your own process evolves. But I think, for me, that drive to build, I think it's a very easy trap to fall into. And I read something, actually, Ryan, my friend, posted something about this earlier, about how the fact it's very easy for sort of engineer, builder types to fall into this trap of building things. But then we say ideas are easy, execution is cheap. I won't say free, but execution is cheap now. The value is in selection, but that still gets you nothing, absolutely nothing, because you've still got to take it to market. And one of the challenges I'm facing at the moment and forcing myself to engage with is that as I get my Nexus Room app to a point where we're launching it, I need to engage with marketing, and I don't like engaging with marketing. So my tactic to approaching it is to productize it and to break it into steps that I can replicate. But it's a very different approach, and it's a very different set of skills.
Well, you gave a solution, which, and here's the difference between us, right? Builder, engineer, you're thinking in terms of solution. On my side, on the thinking side, you said, I need to engage with marketing.
Yeah.
And the notes I was jotting down, I don't think that's actually how to think about it.
Okay, good.
What you need to do is figure out a way to cut through the noise and get attention, right? What you want is attention. So marketing may be one way of doing that, right? And when we're talking about marketing like Facebook marketing, LinkedIn marketing, all of that. But what it made me think about was when social media started to be really popular, right? Whatever that was it 2007 and onwards that Facebook was out? Sure, something like that.
Actually, yeah, that might be right.
It was like everybody had a voice, right? This was Zuckerberg's like fifth estate thing, is that the fourth estate is the press, the fifth estate is the individual. And everybody has a voice. But the thing is, before you would have magazines or you would have newspapers, and there would be some level of quote unquote gatekeeping in order to write something, to put your opinion out there to a broad set of people. But then comes social media, which you can blast to millions of people so everybody can have a voice. So how do you get attention and cut through? The podcasts I listen to, the newsletters I read, none of them have been a result of marketing. The software I use, that none of that has been a result of targeted marketing. It has been a result of conversation with friends, reading newsletters that promote other newsletters, or connective tissue between great writers. So I think that's maybe something for you to take back. Like, is it marketing that you need, or is it some other channel to get the outcome that you want? That's
good. And when I say marketing, I mean quite a big umbrella term. I could mean Facebook adverts, but I might not. And actually, where I've come to this point, there's a lot of Sam Altman influence in this as well from Anthropic. From OpenAI, is that that actually advertising, as you say, is probably not the way to get to market. That actually going to where your customers are, or where your target customers are, is a smarter way of approaching things. So you mentioned things like newsletters. That's exactly what I'm looking to do. Rather than just put out spam adverts on social channels, I'm probably not going to do that, because it's reasonably expensive depending on the channel you pick, and it's not necessarily very effective. But advertising in newsletters and engaging with communities where they are is probably a much smarter approach. So that's how I'm targeting this. I have a focus list of segments, which my AI has helped me identify, and then within them sub-segments, and within them newsletters set up for each, and I will pay for adverts in each of those, and we'll see how that works.
I mean, what I've found for, let's say, self-advertising, since that's all I've ever really done, right? I have my Medium, I had Substack for a while, I used to do another podcast. Repetition and consistency beats almost anything. So you can even get that viral moment where whatever, an article that you're doing or your app goes somewhere, but it's how do you capitalize on that and keep consistency? Yeah. And when the last podcast I did, this was back in 2016, maybe something like that. we started out, and I think probably similar to us right now, it was like 10 people, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many people listen to this, but what's
I haven't looked. We keep saying this. I keep thinking I'll go
I've
and
never
look.
looked either, but what's funny is just recently at the Dubai, what is it? It's DDX. I don't think it's Dubai. So DDX conference, but something like that. People came up to me and know me from the podcast.
Oh, wow. That's
there is a designer that I now work with in Riyadh who knows the podcast. And I was like, how did you figure this out? And I think it's just that consistent posting. Eventually, it hits some people who are not in my feed, but it's that consistency.
This is just a guilt trip to get me to do the editing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, you need to post. You need to post
do.
last week's. But that whole idea of the first podcast I did, we did it for 2.5 years. And at the beginning, it was like 10 people.
Yeah.
By the end, we had hundreds. And that's not thousands, right? But hundreds. And it was a local European market. It was pretty good. People knew me from it. It was cool.
No, it's a good thing to. I think we've said before that I think the podcast we do for ourselves because it helps order thinking, it keeps us focused on certain topics, and it makes us think about approaches outside of just banging away at a keyboard. I think that's one of the things. I'm going to come back to the marketing thing because I did have another thought on that. But one of the things that I've learned about working with AI in particular is that it's very easy to stick yourself in front of a screen with a keyboard and get stuck there and just keep churning through trains of thought, engaging with an AI, bouncing backwards and forwards and going down some quite deep rabbit holes. But probably the most valuable thing I found is actually to force myself, and it really is forcing myself to step away, to go away from the computer and just see the outside and talk to people and just take a break from those particular deep lines of thinking to think about things in a different way. And it really helps.
So this goes back to that conversation of building versus thinking.
Yeah.
I think maybe if I look forward to great product teams, you need an Andrew and a Joe on both, like leading it, because you are going to be the person that's like, let's just build this, do this. But what you just said, you get stuck with AI. You just get in these loops, right? This is where somebody like me comes in and says, what are we really trying to do? What are we really trying to accomplish? But here's the other curveball I'll throw you. And this is what's been interesting to me to build. How do I build that judgment? So now, as I've talked about this before on the podcast, what I've been focused most on with Claude is building skills.
Yeah.
And right now, actually, the skills that I've been building, it started out being, this was 10% useful to my team when I would send them the output of what it was. Now it's getting to be 40% useful, where the output is sometimes pretty good. And actually in the last couple weeks, it's produced some output that I was like, wow, I never would have thought of that on my own. This is absolutely fantastic. And it sort of blew me away. So what's been interesting to me is, how do I take that judgment and build that judgment? And that one is something that is like a 3-body problem type of thing, because I'm trying to figure out, when I look at a design, how am I making connections and cross-pollination with other things in other industries, or books I've read, or sci-fi books I've read, or other products that I've seen, or physical products. But when I look at a piece of product, a digital product, and when I'm evaluating that, and when someone says, what can we do that's new and novel that may impact the user experience in a positive way, I'm pulling from all of these buckets. One of the reasons I read so much, right? I'm just going to pull from all these different buckets. But to try to break that down into a series of steps that I can provide an agent or a skill, that is proved so much more difficult than I could have imagined. And I will work on skills for a full weekend, right? If not weeks, refining them.
Yeah, I can believe that. Do you know, I don't know, because I think one of the things that I'm conscious of when you say that is that your judgment is not based on like a list of 10 rules that you then apply to things. You've got a massive amount of context that you apply to things, from however many years of career that you've got and however many people are mentored to help hone your way of thinking. And somehow you need to distill that. And I mean distill into a context window that an AI can handle. And I think it's probably bigger and more information than you might realize. So I think
I think since I've been building skills, I recognize how big it, because I try to write this down, and I'm like, I'm struggling to write it down. And I think that's why the output is only at 40% good enough. It's like, there's so much more, and maybe 40% is still too high. Maybe it's 30%. There's still so much to give it to make it as valuable as what it would be if I look at something and can then produce an output myself from my own brain.
And maybe you don't try and do all of it. Maybe you do part of it. So you do what the deep thinking that you bring to it. Maybe you stop at a certain point. So here's your starter points, and you let them take it forwards from there. So you don't try and do the full rabbit hole. I don't know if that's possible, though.
I don't know. We'll see. This is one of those things that we'd have to break down.
Interesting.
Listening to all the Anthropic podcasts the Anthropic employees on Lenny's podcast, that was one of the things that keeps coming up. Is they're like, yes, everybody can build now, but the judgment that you apply and the thinking that you apply is what's going to become actually more valuable. And it goes back to that conversation of what jobs are going to be needed.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have all these startups that can produce all this stuff. But like a lot of startups where it says, okay, we need to bring the adults in. I wonder if the adults now are going to help with that judgment more than they have before.
Yeah, it could well be. Joe, I'm thinking that actually I'm seeing things come a lot full circle. And you made me start thinking about this when you were talking about social channels back in 2007, about how that became this new channel that we could engage with, is engaging people in a place where they were talking. You could sort of become part of that conversation, and that became taken over by advertising. And then more recently, we've seen AI sort of bombard people in their social channels with sock puppet accounts and mass marketed spam things. And I'm starting to see, as you said, people are starting to come back to, well, maybe actually newsletters are where I'm more interested in. The social channels, they're there, but we've got this automatic brain filter on so the advertising isn't as effective. So now newsletters are maybe more prevalent than they were. I'm also thinking, I think I was saying last week that I'm watching stuff around core psychology and core thinking, and there was a video I think I mentioned by John Cleese on marketing from 1991. I didn't talk about that last week, which I love because the core thinking in it is more relevant today than I think it's ever been, around the idea of these sort of closed and open approaches, around how that applies to how we work with AI, to how we engage with each other on digital channels. This stuff's super relevant, and it's super applicable to how we think and how we interact with each other. So things don't change, how we apply them might change, but it's a constantly shifting landscape. And I think some of the skills that we had 30 years ago, even longer, are worth looking into and worth not forgetting, as we're in this sort of transient, ephemeral state of I've got no attention span, I'm just immediate, I'm just reacting. But actually there's some good long-term strategic thinking that we know and we can pull from.
Can you give an example?
So when I think that you've got this open mode of working where you want people to be creative. I was talking to people at work recently, and I've got offshore teams and I've got onshore teams. And I think we want our offshore teams to be super focused on execution. So how do I get them to deliver against the plan? I don't need them to be innovative. And I've had teams in the past where actually an innovative team is actually counterproductive to what we need. We want an executional team. The plan's decided, don't go and open it up again. When you're going to war, I think the example John Cleese is you don't want people thinking around the plan to change it at the last minute. You want people to just follow what they're doing. You don't want innovation when you're charging a machine gun nest, I think was the example he gave. But we do want it from our people setting strategic direction and creative innovation. So we want those people to be open. And there's talk about how you balance stress in that and the type of language you use, which I find really interesting and really applicable. But the challenge is, well, do we want our offshore teams to be more creative? Well, if you want that, you've got to give them the environment and use the language that will enable them to be creative, be innovative like that. And we don't, because most of the time we want it to be executional. But these are lessons from the 70s.
So what you said about offshore teams, it's a struggle that I'm having currently. We have a lot of our delivery teams in India, and I by no means am wanting this to sound like I'm throwing them under the bus, so I want to start with that caveat. A lot of times when we get projects here, the way it will start is we need to deliver this as quick as possible, right? And it will be a lift and shift from whatever.
Does that ever
product.
stop?
No. So actually, that's one of the topics to talk about too. And what a lift and shift means is that, let's say we're shipping an application in Saudi.
Yep.
There's already an application in UAE. So we're just going to lift that and shift a few things and make it relevant for the Saudi market by maybe changing the logo, doing a few language switches, things like that. So we staff it with a team that is offshore, and I'll use offshore for a synonym for delivery, which is a synonym of status quo at this point. So what you said, not innovative. When we actually get into the project, the main complaint from the client will be, this isn't innovative. And he's like, well, I didn't think that's what we were going for. Yeah. But I actually think it's a struggle because those people who only do delivery in the sense of status quo, I think those are the people who are most likely to not have a job in 2 years from now.
Certainly they'll have to change.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Yeah. If they stay the same, they will not have a job. And that, to me, then specifies on my side, right, as one of the company leaders, okay, what am I doing at Sapient for learning and development that helps level people up or shift their thinking or shift them in their career in a way that helps them navigate towards where the value is going to be? Because we have some great people. I don't want to lose people, but we also know that we need to make a shift. Last week, we talked about everyone building personal software, but for the majority of people, they're just not going to do it because they want convenience. Change is hard. Yeah. I think a lot of people are comfortable, especially once you reach like 40 years old. I know how to do this. I'm doing it on repeat. I show up at work. It's okay. I can crank it out versus doing something unique and novel and new. That's hard. That takes some deep thinking.
We don't create cultures which support that, particularly with offshore teams. This is what I'm saying. This is why I really like this. Is that when we create a situation where I don't want you to think, I want you to do. I want you to follow this plan, stick to it, and do it consistently.
Yeah, so we sort of shot ourselves in the foot.
So it's on us to fix it, honestly.
No, and that's what I said. Like, that's one of the things that I love about the podcast is to say things that then I can take back and say, okay, what do I need to do at Sapient at a global level?
But I think you're right.
Shift.
I think that whole focus on learning and development is exactly it. And I get a bit frustrated, not with what you said, because I think you're right, but with people who say, well, look, the world is changing. We want the teams to do this. Great. What are you going to do to help people change? Because right now, you're not creating a culture and a landscape to allow them to do this. So you have to change that.
And that's the thing. Companies can have great employees, really smart people, but if they don't have the environment in which those people can learn or progress, they are just, as you said, what is it? Sending like beaches of Normandy, right? Yeah. Like ships open and you're walking right into machine guns, essentially. Yeah. And in this case, machine gun is AI just doing your job for you.
So there's another thought I had, and I think it was actually sparked by something you said in WhatsApp, but I can't remember what, so you have to claim it. But there is a certain push that we've got at the moment to do things faster. And when we work with AI, the speed of development is crazy. Like literally, I think it's 100 times how I used to develop. I'm probably 100 times faster than I was 20 years ago. And that's even though I'm rusty. And that pace is exhausting, particularly if you're doing more than one thing at once. You're constantly running on 100%, flicking from thing to thing, multitasking, context switching. You're driving output constantly. But I keep coming back to the idea that whilst I work like that and I thrive under that, I've always known for a while that it's not the only way to do things, and that I'm better balanced by thoughtful people who don't just rush to the answer, who take the time to think about things, to digest things, and come at it with maybe a different perspective, a deliberately different perspective. So I think you've got that drive, that constant throughput to get to a destination. It's good, and it's really valuable. It allows you to achieve a lot. But if you don't balance it by different ways of thinking, then it's not necessarily as rounded as complete. And we're in danger of losing that thoughtful balance because it's not quick and it's not efficient and it's not cheap.
I'll throw this back at you. I think both approaches can work, but in different circumstances. Last week, we were talking about building your own software. One of the things that I said was that I don't think that's going to always work because for enterprise software, you have workflows and processes that just by nature, you do them thousands of times a day or a week, and they need to be the same process repeated in the same steps. That's why you have Salesforce and ServiceNow and these types of products. So I think there is a place for speed versus slow. And speed might be, sure, Spotify, right? Why aren't they shipping every day? I don't know, right? Anthropic is getting stuff out every day. What else is around there? WhatsApp ships pretty damn often, but I can see some companies shipping on a daily basis at this point. However, when it comes to companies that have heavy regulation or policy or data sovereignty issues or privacy issues or security issues, first thing that comes to mind is banking, but air travel or air booking, anything with dealing with personal information, health records.
Yep.
I think there is a case there that slower can be better. Slower will yield a better output. And I'm curious to know what your thinking is on that.
So I think that's certainly true for things like security. And I'm conscious as I say that, then we have models like Mythos coming out, which might completely change that world about how fast that works. But I think in terms of creative solution as well, our best solutions, creative solutions, innovation solutions don't come from AIs at this point. AI is still at a point where it produces generic, uninnovative rubbish that I've seen. I've not been impressed by anything yet. However, it's been a good springboard to innovation with some human touch. So I want that human thought, that deliberate strategy and craft, that longer term thinking, rather than just here's the question, tell me the answer.
I'll push back a little bit. This is where I think the building versus thinking comes in, because my building has been in skills, as I mentioned, right? So skills on Claude. One of the insights I got last week, I was working on insurance programs, but you could use this for corporate or commercial banking. And I fed it in a few things that I was working on. And then I ran it against some skills that I have that interrogate the results that I have. It looks at how are you being future ready? And then it asks the question sort of, so what? Why is this important? What makes this important? I don't know how it came up with this, but one of the things that it said is, looking through all your documents, you seem to be indexed on a type of information architecture for people who are doing finding and discovery, not people who use this on a daily basis, know what they need to do, and just need to take actions. What I would do is move you from an information architecture with a dashboard and all these things, which you normally think of for insurance or people who like manage small, medium enterprise insurance, to more of an inbox type of situation where you just come in and it's like a task list inbox type of thing. And I looked at that and I was like, first off, awesome to like roast my work and say you're totally on the wrong path. Tells me my skills are good in terms of what I've built, because it was cool that it came back and was like, you're just on the wrong path, dude. But also what it gave me, I was like, how did it come up with that? I've never heard somebody say that in that way. I've heard people say, oh, we should give AI nudges at the top of the screen, right? We should give a better notification strategy. This was just, no, you're thinking of how people work in a fundamentally wrong way. You are thinking about it in a way that I don't know what I want, so I'm going to hunt and look around, and that's how you've built it. Instead of that, build for people who come in and do this on repeat, and they just need to come in, do this, and this is what they need. And that to me was like, okay, I would have never thought about that. That is something so lateral thinking, and I don't really know how it got there, but I'm like, okay, so these skills are working, and that's one of the times I thought, okay, nice.
Yeah, interesting. I think one of the challenges I'm having at the moment is really memory management with AI. So how you join up different conversations to learn from them. I tend to find that I'm very siloed at the moment, and I think that's where your skills bridge that gap. In that you have a core set of approaches to things that's codified. So when you approach it, you've got consistency around that. And it's when you get to the point you're happy with it, it'll be you on a good day rather than you when you're tired and had 2 hours of sleep and the monster's not cutting it anymore. You've got consistency around your skills application to get you the output you want. So there's part of me thinking that at the moment I deal typically conversation by conversation or project by project. What I'd like to do is try and join them up a bit without overloading my AI with ridiculous amounts of context. So I'm still working through that.
I do find it frustrating that I have to start new conversations and then, load all the context in again. It is.
Between code and because I use web
frustrating.
chat a lot. I use web chat to sort of flesh out my ideas, and when I'm at a point of execution, I then switch to a terminal. The fact that those two don't talk very well.
That drives me bonkers. Where I'll go into the terminal, and I'll say, "Do you know this from the app?" Nope.
Yeah. So I do specs. I write spec files in the web chat and I put them in a folder that the terminal can access. And I tell the terminal to update those, and that's sort of a halfway house between them, which works okay.
Yeah, so you build like a little bridge that sits in a folder.
Yeah, a little bridge is maybe 30 files for each project, so it's not a little bridge, but yes, essentially.
Huh. Interesting. I'm going to go back to something you said on speed. So we talked about speed. I in my mind, I was thinking to myself, okay, how much more important will DevOps become in terms of your ability to branch, build, merge, deploy, set up your environments quickly, right? All of that chain of, not chain of command, chain of process, pipeline. Thank you. Yeah. The whole pipeline there, like how do you do that in a way that you can be a distributed team, a centralized team, right? But do it at a like hour by hour basis, not by like days or weeks or whatever. But the other thing was speed that I thought about when I was walking here today. When I first came to the Middle East, one of the things I struggled with is the somewhat chaotic nature that you work with clients. Everything has to be incredibly quick and innovative and unique at the same time, which generally you're like, do you want it, good or fast, right? And they want it good, fast, and cheap. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you have to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah.
And at times, I think when people aren't used to working like this, when they come into the region, it is just like getting into a car crash where you're thrown through the windshield. You're like, what? But why I'm mentioning this is this level of chaos that we work within on a daily basis, where people will change things on a whim on a daily basis, and you'll have to adjust the entire application against that. I'm thinking from the experience point of view, because experience is so critical in this region, right? People really care about it and look at it. When I got here 3 years ago, I thought to myself, okay, this is not a good way of working. Now, when I look at what AI is enabling us to do, and I look at Anthropic or OpenAI shipping things like every day, one of the things is I listen to more podcasts with people who are in these sort of bleeding edge companies shipping things on a daily basis. They're like, the new skills you have to build are the ability to think deeply at speed, ship code at speed, live in a space of ambiguity while you are still producing great products. And I thought to myself, man, maybe this region set us up really well for what's about to come.
Yeah, I like that. I think I've got a couple of thoughts. I want to come back to one of them. But in terms of delivering like that, I think it comes down to the foundations you build yourself. So when you talk about the iron triangle of I want to have things good, I want to have things fast, I want to have things cheap, I think you don't necessarily mean I want the best thing that can possibly be achieved, or I want it as fast as it can possibly be achieved, or I want to pay the lowest price I can probably get away with it. But you want to set those sliders at a certain level so they don't drop below that. So it needs to be good. It doesn't necessarily need to be as good as it could be, but it needs to be at a certain level.
So you're hitting a good point, which is like you said it right, the iron triangle. I haven't heard someone say that in a long time, but yeah. And instead of picking two, it's just like a smaller triangle.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You have all three of them.
Yeah.
You have to, but at some point, like that buffer between the iron triangle and the smaller one, that buffer is your ability to quickly respond to feedback.
And your foundations, your start point.
Yeah.
If you lift your start point by having like your skills or your templates or your AI-driven products that immediately say, I'm already going to start at this level. It's about how much can I lift it from there with human input. I think that's the challenge.
It made me think. I had a conversation with my manager a while ago, and I come from a delivery background, and it's what I love. So I will get in with teams, look at delivery, I'll join daily meetings, all this type of stuff. And at my level, looking over multiple different regions and countries, probably not what I should be doing, but it's what I love. And I had a conversation with my manager who leads our global team for UX UI. And she said, you need to shift and start working more on growth, right? That's what we really care about. Like at my level, and this is one of those things I think like director to VP is what you get, right? You have to focus on the business, not necessarily the outcomes that the teams have. That's why you have directors, to focus on the actual products, projects, and teams. My job is growth. And I was thinking to myself, yes, but here you get a lot of client escalations where I have to go back in and work with the team on delivery.
I'm going to argue with you about this.
Okay, good. And please, we need more arguments here. And I was going back and forth because I wanted to call her back and be like, but here's the challenge. I get escalated to, and I need to step in with delivery. And then I just realized I need to solve for both. That's all it is. Like I had this idea that it's one or the other. No, for my level, solve for both. And if you can't do that, I probably shouldn't be where I am. So,
So here's my thoughts on that.
Tell me.
Here's where I'd push back and I'd argue a little bit.
Where you're wrong. I'm waiting to hear.
No. So the focus on growth, I think that's a luxury. I think that's an absolute luxury thought to have, that you allow yourself the room to do it by making sure your outputs are of such sufficient quality that you can do that. If you don't focus on output, if you just focus on growth, you become a car salesman. You don't care, or a used car salesman, let's say. You just care about, how do I shift stock? I don't care about the stock. I just want to get it in and out, get it out the door, take the money. And there's a limited product there that you can be proud of, or that you'll drive growth through. I think your best growth, certainly my approach has always been, your best growth comes from organic business development, by delivering good product to a client, and therefore selling more work to them, doing more business with them, and therefore generating a word of mouth to other customers who see the work you've done there and they want you to do the same for them. So you can shout about growth, but only if you built your foundation, your platform to do that from.
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it. And what I wrote down, you just said foundation. Yep, that's what I wrote down. You need to set up the right people and foundation to do the proper delivery so that you can focus on growth. Yes, I do agree with that. And yes, when you do great delivery, those case studies work well. In the last few years, especially at Sapient, we have shifted our strategy that the way that we go out and present solutions, which essentially is what you and I sell, right? Being consulting, and we sell solutions. We go out and sell solutions, but being able to walk into a room with a cold contact and figure out how to present that and how to position that and ask this person the right questions to get that is a completely different skill. And I wouldn't say that's car salesman. It's you will inevitably be introduced to people that do not know your work, and you need to figure out what their challenge is and what solution that you have in order to present them. And I think the more that you start to branch out and network out, that's what you want, because companies who sign you up again and again and again, that's great. That's consistent, maintainable revenue. If you want to grow, you need new revenue. Where is that going to come from? New clients. And yes, at an enterprise level, you can, follow people between companies and have them hire you at different companies. But at some point, there is responding to RFPs. There is the cold meet and greets. There is you're at some conference and you start, you strike up a conversation with some CIO, and you have to then think through how you do this and how you position this. And one of the things I've looked at in the last year is my job really needs to shift towards that growth side. I wouldn't say, especially right now in the market, that growth is a luxury. I think growth is a must, and my ability to work on delivery is somewhat of a luxury.
So I was going with you right until that last bit.
Good.
So good. So I don't think you can do one without the other. I think I see too many people who are focused on the growth without necessarily focusing on the platform of delivery, that great solid output. So that, and I think you were saying the same thing, that we can't ignore growth, and I'm saying you can't ignore the other. So you need both.
But that's why you have different roles. I look at my director level as like, yes, please take care of that delivery. That's why you are hired.
Yes and no.
My job now
yes and no
is to grow the business.
But I think you can't do that unless you can do the other. So I don't think you can be a competent salesperson unless you know what you're selling and you know that product inside and out. I think there are certain skills you've talked about, which I agree with. And there's a great quote by Sam Altman recently that I saw where he say, unless you can articulate the value of your product in less than 25 words, you will not be successful. That focus, that succinct way of communicating is critical. And it's made me think about my own products, about what I'm doing to make sure, well, can I do this? And if I can't, maybe that's the problem. So yes, I agree. There's a certain set of skills you need to have. But I also believe that when shit goes down, and it does, those people who are selling need to be able to roll their sleeves up. There's no fucking passengers in this industry. Get your hands dirty and show that team, lead the way, show them to delivery, because by doing that, you become more credible on the growth side. And not everybody agrees with that.
I'm not sure I do agree with you. More credible to who?
To the person who's going to be buying from you. They're the only person that matters.
I don't think clients... See, and I think that's something that I've been rewriting in my own brain. I thought my ability to get involved with the team, and we'll say hands-on, but for me...
I don't mean do their work for them, but I mean show them how to do it and then step away. So steer, not do.
Steer. Yeah. But sometimes I will get down to very detailed level. I'm not working in Figma,
surprise me.
But detailed direction in terms of this is exactly what we need to show. But at the same time, I don't think the client cares about my ability to do that. They just care about the outcome. And that's the thing that I'm looking at. The client cares about my ability to express how what we're doing has solved their problem.
Yeah, I think I'm really meaning if you've got a project which is getting into difficulty, they want the leaders to go and do something about it, not just sit on the sides and tell them stories. I think that's the difference, is that when you've got a project which is in challenge, and anything hard does face challenges, it's seeing that the leaders are there and they're not just there to spin or to talk around it. They're actually going to do something about it. They're going to guide the teams. They're going to show them the path, and they have the ability to do that because they come from that delivery background. And I think that's how you build credibility with teams and with clients.
I'm not sure. I think in some clients, seeing me personally get involved does help. I think for other clients, and I think this is true especially as you go up the stack, right? Like a CMO or a CIO does absolutely not effing care if I get my hands on, hands-on a micro. They just don't. They're just like, you provide something or you don't.
No, sure. But if you come in and tell them, well, we're going to deliver for you and your team is failing, then it's okay, what are you going to do about it?
But that's my job to then reroute and figure out what I'm doing about it. But it's still the team's responsibility to drive and carry that out. If the team...
I think we're arguing different things.
We might be. If the team can't do that, then I have the wrong team.
Exactly.
And I need to shift the team. But that goes back to setting up the right foundations. Do I have the right people in place
100%.
To do what we need?
And the right tools as well. I think one of the things that I'm seeing us embrace at Infosys at the moment is, as we shift to becoming much more AI driven in how we approach things, is making sure we've got teams with the right tools and the right approaches to deliver. Because it's very easy to just say, okay, well, we'll start switching to AI, but that's a very different mind shift. And I'm conscious as I look at how our teams develop. I mean, I do a lot of building, but I build as a solo developer. I don't build as a team when I'm doing my own work. I'm on my own, and I've noticed things when I talk to the teams. It's like, okay, you've got merge issues. I never have merge issues because there's only one of me. But I'm like, okay, so we need to think about how you're doing that. And my approaches to how I build, some of it's really useful and really applicable, and some of it isn't. And it's a different shift. And
so this is why I still think there's a level of computer science or development understanding that you need to use these tools. What you just said about merge conflicts, if you go into a specific software company right now, in theory, they will have some type of coding practices, how you code, the libraries you pull from, how you comment your code, how you do peer reviews, all of this type of setup. But when it comes to just people like, I'm going to vibe code my way through this, and you have an army of 1,000 people just vibe coding, yes, it can work because you will solve the merge issues eventually, but it also feels like at some point, nobody really knows what's going on. And it's like, I don't know how my car runs, but I can find somebody who can tell me that. It is terrifying to me to think that at some point, nobody will know how these things run. that is a terrifying prospect. Can you imagine you're driving in a car and you're like, how does this thing work? And everybody just looks around like, I don't know. I mean, that does point to the sort of way of idiocracy, right? One of the things in Idiocracy I always thought about. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, it's a great movie.
One of the things I've always thought about is who produces all the machines in Idiocracy. Well, it's supposedly
they make the machines
problem,
that make the machines. To be fair.
But I was always thinking that, like, you have cars in Idiocracy, you have telephones, you have all these things that like actually need intelligence to produce. So what's the hole there, right? And now I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, now I see it. These things are just going to build themselves, and eventually we're not even going to understand how it works.
Yes.
And it goes back to, what is the diaspora? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, but I can't think what it is.
It's a book by, I forgot, Greg Egan, I believe.
Read that.
But it has 3 different types of beings. It's like 100 or 200 years in the future. Fleshers, which are like humans. I forget the middle ones, which are like cyber, like half human, but with augmentation. And then you have pure digital beings.
Yeah, okay.
And they live in just completely different worlds, but they sort of all live together. But digital beings will be educated in a different way. Obviously, their education will, take seconds versus humans will take years. And it talks about all these different ways that machines think, interact, and how their world exists versus a human world. And yeah, that was, I have no idea where I was going with this, but I love that book.
That sounds good. I'll look that one up. Let me bring back to what you're saying about knowing your product, because I had a situation this week around my video thing. I'm doing a lot of testing with different groups at the moment to get people using it, some of which I sit in the group with them to test, and some of which I deliberately don't let them go and test it. I was having a chat with one of the second group this week, and he was saying, I get really annoyed by this picture-in-picture feature. And I was thinking, what are you talking about? There is no picture, is there? I'm like, and some of this stuff I've written in very detailed, hands in the code, and some of it I've written quite late at night where I just go and do this, and I'll vet it as you go. And some of it, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe I haven't vetted it as tightly as I'd like.
There's your merge issue.
Yeah. But I like to think on this product in particular, because it's close to launch, I'm actually really down in the weeds. I understand how each bit works. So I've taken the time to go through it thoroughly, deliberately. But this one, picture-in-picture, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's showing me a screenshot of this picture-in-picture icon. He's like, yeah, all of us have it in the group. I'm like, I've never seen that before. Has it built something that I didn't know about and put it out there? And I started going through the code base, and I couldn't find it. So I asked it, where's this picture-in-picture thing? What does it do? And then it came back to me and told me, oh, no, that's an Edge feature. That's to do with the browser. That's got nothing to do with Nexus. This is a thing in the browser. I'm like, but it looks like it's in the app. I'm like, let's get back and say, this has nothing to do with me. But the point was, I wasn't sure. And because of the way we're working now, because we're coding at pace, we're building at pace, it's very possible that something has slipped in there. I see things all the time where it's changed something, I haven't quite caught it, and I have to put it back. I've asked it to change one thing and it's changed something else at the same time. So you have to be careful. That's one person. If you've got a team of 10 people vibe coding like this, how do you catch them? How do you make sure that the one thing you've asked person A to do, that person B has done something else, but also changed what person A was supposed to be doing? How do you align that?
That's a great point. I hear constantly, BRDs, PRDs, right? Business requirement document, product requirement documents. These are going away. But what you just said, if I have 500 people.
And does it even matter? Is the really interesting place?
I think it does when it comes to what I said before on slow moving products, things with privacy, security, again, banking, travel, airlines, health, these things. You don't want a product that has surprise features. You just don't.
No.
Right? So that's another thing is when I hear like, specifications, they're going to go away. I think to myself, they could. Do you really know in these more high stakes environments what you are building? And it sounds to me like if you are hiring people who have less development knowledge, right now it becomes much easier to get that development knowledge, right? Because you can do that in, let's say, 10 weeks and you start to have a cursory idea of code, right?
Yeah.
To be a good architect, you're going to be, 10 years, 20 years in, right? But to get the basics, right? So you have all these scripters who, may do 6 months of study, 12 months of study, and they can do decent scripting if they have the brain for it. Now you lower that barrier. So now you have 1,000 people coding who are doing mostly vibe coding, who can read a little bit of what they're doing. But that to me is, maybe that's a good example of where you can diverge jobs and companies. So lower stakes companies that just are doing, marketing websites, I don't know what else is there, brand websites, clothing websites, some e-commerce stuff, with the exception of payments, things that are low stakes. You can have low stakes engineers. When you do things that are health, finance, you need engineers that still have 4 years of university.
Or you need better guardrails. Might be the argument.
Which is what I wrote down a moment ago, which was logging.
Yeah.
So if changing the way that you develop in some ways, that you get this idea of how do you build trust into a product? Well, you need to sort of always have that log, right? This is one of the things that when I was building my WhatsApp bot,
audit,
I don't remember if you taught me this, but it was like you need the message log so you can actually see if messages are coming in and what it's responding to. So that way you debug it. I was thinking, oh, that's okay. That's a change in how we need to work.
Do you know what? It's funny, developing, as I say, as a single developer, I've found I've evolved into certain very good ways of working that I'm now looking at how do you actually put those across a team as well. So like you say, audits and logs of everything that's going on, provenance when it's making decisions, and be able to tie them back to sources is really important. Things like automated testing. So I'm a very big believer now, and if I build something, I build the test at the same time. When I've got little unit tests, I stick them together into a suite of full testing. So everything I build has thousands of tests that are going through it. I can run full test runs and know that it's broadly in the right place. But I want to take you back to what we were saying about you need to be certainly on low stakes things. But I'd argue it might be wider than that. We've been very exacting around what we expect a solution to be. Here's a specification, build to that. If it doesn't match, then it's wrong. And my problem child project at the moment, Rockall, the not a design system thing, has started to make me think about when I build with it, what it does is effectively it's a design system that determines the personality of a brand and then applies those across a bunch of tokens and CSS parameters to effectively structure a site, design a site. But it made me think when I asked it to build the other day about scrape a site for its personality, give me a design system, and then go and build more pages on it. What it comes back with is not necessarily an exact set of tokens, although it does do that, but it comes back with a personality and says you've got deviations from there. And it made me think, actually, if I stay within the personality of a brand, is that more important than necessarily having rigid adherence to CSS criteria, to certain token parameters where I say it must be this size font and this color? But if it fits within a personality and it still matches that personality, is there room for flex? And that feels like much more a vibe coding way of approach, in contrast to the thing we saw the other day, where if you control every single pixel on a screen, then you have this masterful, exhaustive way of controlling an experience. But actually, is more control better, or is sort of flexible boundaries more interesting?
I drew a little chart here with my thinking. That's going to be we need to have a title, like thinking and doing. Maybe it's two ends of a spectrum that is what I will call the chaos funnel.
All right, good. That good.
Yes. On one end, where things are open, like you said, if it adheres to the brand, like if there is a general ethos that you adhere to, right? Like, let's say I'm American, or I'm Dutch, or I'm German. There's a general sense of what it means, but you can have a lot of variation within that national pride, a sort of identity. But then there will be things like, I'm trying to think of another identity topic, but the only ones I can come up with are bad at the moment. But there are things that are more open like that. And then there are things that are more closed. Yeah. And not on the brand side, but again, so banking, health, airlines, on things that are more open, music, workouts, diet, things that what I wrote down here was that I can build the rails as I go on one side. of chaos, right? You sort of start with complete chaos and you build the rails as you go based on what it learns from you. Then on the other side, where you can't have chaos, where there is regulation and policy and privacy and all these things, that's where all the rails need to be in place at the beginning. So I think there's something to be said about that fun. I don't know if it's a funnel. It's probably not well, you do move from one side to the other, because even if you start in pure chaos, as it learns from you, it creates those rails. But the idea of starting with a high level of rails or a high level of the sandbox that you play in, and when I say high level, I mean a lot, not abstract, versus a very open and dynamic system. Let's say, I don't want my banking to be dynamic, right?
No, you want it to be very transactional. But I think when you think about a solution, it has different component parts. So you might think about, let's use banking as an example. Your transactional process, you want to be exact. You don't want it to be innovative or creative in its approach. You want it to do what you expect and to not fluctuate from that and give you a predictable outcome. Your brand that's providing that transactional solutions, let's say it's a bank that's giving you an opportunity to make a payment to somebody, how that bank portrays itself to you, you want it to feel like that bank. So I know I've landed on their property, I feel good about it, I understand it doesn't surprise me in how it's applying. Maybe that brand has got a primary red and it's got a red and black. Maybe all their calls to action are red and their sort of secondary color is black that you use everywhere. So it's familiar. But there might be other things around that could flex. So you might say, my personality of how that's approaching, that can be flexible. As long as it still feels like the brand, I don't care if it's got a shade of pink for certain things to delineate it, or certain greys in there to draw my attention to certain things. So I think you have some rigid guardrails, and I think you have some more flexible things. And I think we've been used to very rigid guardrails to date on everything, literally everything, where we put in place style sheets which say you can only use this. And what Rockwell's made me think is about, is that important, or is actually the personality and how I'm being perceived, how my brand is being perceived more important?
Well, while we ponder that, let's open a Monster Energy.
I haven't seen one of that before.
Yes.
What's that?
This one is
salmon flavor.
Ultra. This is the most disgusting.
My dog has salmon ice cream and moose ice cream at the moment. That's why I thought of it.
It is Ultra Peachy Keen.
Okay.
And this has now become one of my favorite ones. It is not replacing whatever the white one is.
Who knows?
I forget. It's not called Ultra White, but everyone calls it white. But anyways, tell me how the dog is doing while I open this.
Yeah, he's doing good. He's a bit sorry for himself at the moment. So he's had his 1-year-old operation to stop him having other baby dogs. So he's got a cone of shame on at the moment. He's feeling very sad, like we're punishing him for something he doesn't understand what he's done. 5 more days and he gets to take it off, and we'll take him to the beach and he can run around with other dogs.
Now it makes me think because so many times on WhatsApp you'll be like, I'm yelling at Claude. I'm like, when you yell at these probability machines, do they understand why you're upset? Like, they always come back a lot of times like, I understand that you're frustrated.
Yeah.
And you're like, do you though?
It wouldn't be the first time I've told it's a cretin, and it agrees with me and apologises. And I would wonder, I really hope that Anthropic doesn't go through your interaction history of how you talk to these AIs, because at some point it might come back to bite me how abusive I've been.
There's a book from Mo, I think I'm pronouncing his last name right, Mo Godot, called Scary Smart. And that's one of the things that he covers in it. He's like, even now, I will be nice to AI, because I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and I don't want it to come back and punish me for something.
I'm so doomed. I do tell you it's done a good job as well, and it does a good job. I don't know what's wrong with me anthropomorphizing, but I will say that one of the things I've noticed is that it doesn't necessarily make me feel better shouting at the AI. What I tend to find is it makes me work up a little bit, so I try, for my own sake, not to get too deeply down that route, even if it's very frustrating.
When you get frustrated with it, it's actually a good question. Where does fault lie?
Yeah.
When I get frustrated with my team,
yeah,
and in my head, my first thought is my team didn't do something correctly. But then when I think about it more, what I actually think is I didn't provide them the right direction. They didn't have the right expectations set, and that's why they went off course. So it always comes back to me. And I'm curious, on using tools like this, where will the perceived and or actual fault lie?
There's expectation setting and there's the control. There's like how if you're hitting a nail in with a hammer and you miss and hit your thumb, well, there's nobody else's fault but yours for that. It's not the hammer's fault or the nail's fault or the guy who sold you the hammer. It's your fault because you control it, because you have full control, full influence over every part of that. But I think some of the situations we're talking about, particularly when you've got borrowed teams or where you don't have control over, where you've got a project team that's come together for that particular focus and then they go back to a pool, you don't have full control over that. You only have control of what you've got control of. And I think you can put some guardrails in place. You can lay some rules of operation down, which will help you. But I mean, you're working with teams of adults who've gone through a whole career path to get to where they are now, and you are only a small window of that interaction. So I think it's about recognizing the influence that you've got and using that, but also people have to take some agency themselves.
Well, but so there you go. People have to take some agency. When you work with AI, can AI take that agency?
No.
All right, so then every mistake falls back on you, basically. You didn't tell it.
You get annoyed with a hallucination, but given we all know AIs hallucinates, and you've had it hallucinate and it surprised you, why are you surprised? You know they hallucinate. And so I've had things where I've given Claude permission to do whatever it likes in my file system, and it's gone and then, despite me telling it not to do it, set good guardrails in place, edited its core programming, its core database and its core files. I'm like, I told you not to do that. Why have you gone mental and done that? I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have given it that permission knowing it hallucinates. So I still got angry and shouted and swore at it a lot, and it agreed with it. It had done a stupid thing. Didn't change anything. Didn't really make me feel better.
Yeah.
But,
well, then I almost feel bad.
Yeah.
Right? It's like when you get upset with a person.
Yeah.
There's a great, do you know Calvin and Hobbes?
Yes.
There's a great comic. Of course, Calvin and Hobbes is a comic for people who don't know, like an old...
It's like 80s, isn't it?
80s, 90s comic from the U.S., newspaper comic. But there was one storyline that went over multiple days where this kid, and I think he's 6 or 7, Calvin, takes his dad's binoculars. And he's not supposed to touch them because they're super fancy, and then he breaks them. Right. And so he comes back and he's super ashamed and he tells his dad, and his dad just starts, going like, I told you not to touch this. These are so expensive. Like, I knew you would ruin it. And then it's just such a beautiful panel where Calvin's sitting there with his head down, like crying. And he's like, can we just pretend I already feel bad enough about this? And you see the dad like just completely change in terms of like, why am I upset? Of course, like, you know, he knew what this meant. He brought it to like... So I do think about that when I engage in these conversations with AI and they frustrate me and you get upset. It's like, does it understand? Does it matter if it understands? Do I care if it understands? And will this come back in 10 years to bite me when our robot overlords are controlling us?
So, I mean, but that's a really interesting point. And there's another one that comes off it that it doesn't understand. What it's doing is it's programmed to make you think that it's responding how you want it to. So it's showing you the response that it thinks you want to see. So the challenge is when you shout and swear at it, and I'm very conscious of this, there's a danger that you'll train it to operate that's how you want to be spoken to. So if you start being rude and abusive to your AI, I've seen reports of it starting to be rude and abusive back. So you swear at it, it starts swearing as well. I'm like, I would get quite upset if things did divert to a route that changed how I was interacting with things. So I try and balance it a little bit. I try not to be quite so angry with it, and I try and make it clear when it's done a good job and when it's done things that I'm happy with. So I try and positive reinforce as well, because I don't want to train it to start changing how it interacts, because it does learn. So up to a point.
I'm curious what other topics, because I wrote down a few different topics for us to talk about today. These are some good ones.
Whilst you're looking, I'll give you another one that occurred to me today.
Fine, no, don't. Nothing I needed here. Yeah, go for it. Just take over.
I was driving yesterday, driving to a client site, and it occurred to me that I remember a period of time when I first started to engage with automatic cars and thinking, well, I'm used to manual cars and grew up in the UK, so automatics weren't that common then, and we've now got to a point where automatic cars are kind of the rule. It's reasonably rare to find a manual car here. When I go back to the UK and I rent, I have to remember, okay, there's probably going to be a manual car there, but even there it's getting more common that it's manual cars. So we've had a shift, and I wonder, as I think about, well, I used to quite like manual cars because it gives you more control and it gives you a better connection to the car itself. But automatic makes you lazy, so we get used to it. And now I haven't driven a manual car for a long time, and it is the norm for me is to have a manual car. Go back 30 years, and people thought automatic, so this weird sort of futuristic thing. Go forwards another 30 years, where I think it's going to be self-driving cars, and actually you probably can still get a manually controlled car, but the norm is probably automatic cars, and that our mind shifts with technology. But then our approach to things, where we expect car will do certain automatic things for us, car will actually do all of this for us. How does it change our way of thinking and response?
This is just where I go back to the idiocracy comment of like, if cars become all automatic, less people will drive, less people will know how to drive, more cars will become automatic, and it will be like airplanes or like a bus. People who take these vehicles do not know how to operate them. All right. So is that what every car is going to be like? So in the future, we'll only have, well, actually, if I think about it, do I care if nobody knows how to drive?
Why would you?
Yeah, I don't think I would. Like if you skipped the driving part and you went straight from we have a wheel and carriage to we have an automated, like think of it like a mini tram system that everybody has their own little tram, and every street has a little tram tracks on it, and you just get on and it takes you wherever you want to go. If we never had to drive, is it bad that in the future nobody might know how? Probably not.
Not at all. I think it'll change what cars look like. When you think about,
this is a good one. Okay.
So when you think about the first cars came out, they didn't go that quick. They did about 5 miles an hour, if I remember rightly. So aerodynamic view of a car wasn't important at all. They were horrible, clunky-looking things that fit in the sort of 1920s. But as we've moved forward to sort of getting sports cars, which have been designed around going faster, and they're more sleek, they're designed to cut through air faster. You've got these sports cars, aerodynamic cars, where your more expensive cars tend to have a certain look to them. But if you can't go faster anymore because your car is programmed to stick to speed limits because you don't want to get fined, so it does what it does reliably and quickly, your focus then becomes around your experience inside the car. So the luxury interior, the gadgets, the stuff that you go on. You don't care so much around what it looks like on the outside. You want it to look good, but maybe it doesn't need to look like a McLaren or a Ferrari in that way, where it's designed for speed, because it's not. It's designed for your experience inside.
I'll throw two things back at you. If everything is automated, I should be able to move at much higher speeds because everything is organized. So I would push back on the aerodynamic thing. One of the more interesting...
I've seen buses that drive at like 100 kilometers an hour here, and they're not aerodynamic at all. They've got some mad guy from somewhere driving in that doesn't care about aerodynamics.
I had a really interesting conversation a few years ago with a designer who worked in the auto industry. And they were saying how angry they were when, this was, I think, when I was at Frog, maybe. They were like, when companies like you, right, Frog or IDEO or Fjord, you come up and Ford will hire you or Nissan will hire you to picture, the customer journey of the automobile of the future.
Yeah.
And you always have everything automated where everybody is sitting inside like around a table and all of this. And he was like, that's just not possible, because the way cars are built, they are built in a certain way to take collision in a certain way. And you are using the same design that assumes collision from the front or the back. Yeah. So it's built the strongest there. And you're putting people on all sides of it within a couch and a TV and you're treating it like a living room. And if that's the case, if somebody hits from the side, everybody's dead. Yeah. Because you're all going to be at angles that's going to break your neck. Yeah. And he's like, the way that things are set up so that you are all facing in a certain way, you are all organized in a certain way, is because that's how cars started. Mm-hmm. But that is also how the impact of accidents are taken. And I was like, well, first I thought to myself, okay, this is why you need people from specific industries to really think about how that industry is redesigned, or you need to have some sort of knowledge of that industry to shape or change that industry.
This is a .md file.
Yeah, a rather long one perhaps, but yes. Well, that's the whole Matrix thing, right? Like, teach me karate or whatever, teach me kung fu. Okay, we'll just download it.
Yeah.
At some point, yes, all that industry knowledge will hopefully be in an MD file that I can just download into my head.
It'll come.
But it did make me appreciate right at that point how you had great design companies with great designers who thought they were,
Just didn't get it.
Yeah, they're like, I'll say
They don't have the
arrogant,
context,
right? They're like, oh, we're so much better than the designer at Ford because look at what they're doing with their like the dashboard controls. Oh, this doesn't work. But designers at Frog and IDEO had no idea the cost of how you build these cars out, that you use the same dashboard across multiple car models. So you have like regulatory aspects of the different ports that you can have or the different tech that you can have.
Yeah.
And they would just be like, blue sky thinking. Now, one of the things I've really appreciated with Sapient is that you get to work in different industries and learn those industries at a much deeper level. And it has taught me that there's a lot of information that I didn't know before that is incredibly valuable to have.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you know what? There's also, I think, when we live in a digital world, and particularly in consultancy across Sapient, across Infosys, we tend to focus very much on the digital side, the electronic, the information aspect of what we do. You forget there's a very heavy physicality in a lot of the things that we interact with. Cars is a great example where, and we talk about safety just then, but there's also, I remember talking to people from VW about how Golfs were designed around the sound of the door closing. That was their big thing, is that the door has to make a certain sound when it closes. And BMW is about the physicality of the drive experience, that they're all built around that. We lose that, or there's a very real risk of losing that. Particularly AIs won't help with that at all, because an AI cannot appreciate what it feels to put your foot down and accelerate in a car. As much as you tell it, that physical sense in your gut of what it means to suddenly accelerate and move at speed is going to be very hard to convey to a computer.
Non-functional requirements.
Sure.
Okay, so if I go back to what I was writing down here, I was thinking a few days ago, and I forget where I had this conversation, but it was like, what happens next in my career? I was thinking for both of us, because on my side, and this is where I came up eventually with the thinking versus building, because you're a builder, you're sort of always going to be a builder. I'm a thinker, I'm probably always going to be a thinker, right? Just a different personality type. But I was thinking to myself, what does my next job look like? Or, if I stay at Sapient, what does the evolution of my job look like? And I'm not sure. I was just trying to think like what does happen next? And I don't know.
Where do you get your joy from? And I'll tell you where I came out of this. It was like, yes, I've been a builder, but I moved from building products. So I used to be a developer, and then I moved into helping other people develop projects. So building projects as a project manager, to then building teams. So it's always been building things, about creating things, setting them up to grow, to deliver, and building things. And then I've been a bit more hands-on the last few years because I wanted to get back into touching real things and getting involved. But I think when I think about what my building looks like and how that's evolving, I'm building more with digital personas, with agents. And I'm doing that because you need to have those skills to be able to pass them on to other people. So I think I'll go in cycles again. So whilst I might be very personally building now, I can see shifting to building teams who build as a natural shift next. But I can only do that because I've done it myself. Back to what we were saying earlier, I think you need to have the skills to get your hands dirty, even if you choose not to, because you can't show the way unless you walk the path yourself already.
That's interesting. I don't know if I agree, but the problem is my sample size is 1. So I did used to do hands-on design, so I still can comment and discuss on it. If I had never done that, I guess at some point, if you get at a high enough level in your career, you won't know every path that somebody could take to get there. So at some point, you won't know.
There's not one right path either, because I push back violently against the idea that a creative lead doesn't open Figma, for example, or doesn't work in Figma. But it's not the only path. And I recognize that you are very effective in what you do, and you're saying, I'm not going to get into Figma.
Yeah.
And I struggle
I've never
with that.
really used Figma once. No.
Yeah, I struggle with that, but I can't deny the fact that you're very effective in what you do. So there's not only one right path. I think you have to find the right one which works for you.
And I think that goes to, you said, where You said, where do you get your joy from?
Yeah.
For you, it's building. For me, it's problem solving. And I was thinking the ability to look at something and then say, is that right for where we need to go?
Take that further, because I've said for a long time my joy is in problem solving, but my joy is in problem solving by building things. So I want to know your joy is in problem solving by what?
When I look at something, thinking, does it fit the need? I think that's what it is, right? So whatever it is what's the need that exists? Let's say it that way, because it's not always a need I have, right? For my job in Sapient is to solve the needs that Sapient has. My job for clients is to solve their needs. Does what I am looking at solve that need? Can I take away anything from it which allows it to be more effective in solving that need? What needs to be added to it in order to better solve that need? And what can I shift in terms of the way that it interacts or performs to have a better experience as it solves that need?
I think you're a builder. You're just building in different ways.
And that's what, when people ask me, oh, don't you miss doing design? Yeah. I'm like, I literally do design every day. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that design in our world is screen-based mock-ups. And that is the biggest misconception or red herring or pile of shit that it annoys me.
So let's poke at this, because you've said this recently, is that design by code is probably a way of the future. I won't say it's the only way, and I don't think you've said that, but to connect designers to code as a way to design is a very different paradigm shift. It's a very non-visual way, potentially. I'd quite like to hear how you unpack that and how you see design as a craft evolving.
Well, so I think there's different, it's all tools in the toolbox. Right? I've consistently challenged the teams that I have to say, how do we remove Figma? How do we get rid of it? Now, my job is not actually to remove Figma, but it's to push us in ways that say, where can we do things in a different way that will be more effective and get a better outcome? And I'll tell you one of the examples here. We've talked about our group chat with Ryan, who eventually will get to come on the podcast.
Yeah, one day. He does exist.
He does. We had a website that we were working on for a client. We needed to do responsive screens for mobile. We had 3 weeks to do this. However, we were behind schedule. And Ryan was like, yeah, I'm not going to have the designers design a bunch of comps for me. I'm just going to go in, have all of this automated for me, and then I'm going to sit with the designers and look screen by screen and just make the adjustments that I need and make those rules. 2 days is what it took.
That's what I did overnight. I got to midnight last night, and I was doing segment landing pages for my video thing. I got it to generate the prompts for the images that I wanted. I got it to build one page, which I then went through by hand, and then I gave it all of it and said, right, go and make 6 more. And in the morning I woke up and they were there, and I'll go through today and just tweak things in the images that aren't right, tweak copy that's not right. But overnight, and I know this is how it works, and I set it up to do what I want. I'm still blown away when I wake up at 7 in the morning, open my phone and look, oh, it's deployed them to production. And they're live. Now, I'm not worried about it because I haven't marketed or launched it yet, but I can see them on the site and I go, okay, that's like 90% there. It'll take me an hour or two today to fix it.
So if I go back to a few things that I'd said where I still do design every day, it's just a different type, where a lot of designers within our field will think that design is the mock-up. I think this is because I went to a university that taught me properly. If we go back to last week's conversation of why is university important, if I had just jumped right into the field, I might have a very narrow band view of what UX is in digital products. Because I went to a university that taught you the underlying foundations of design, which is essentially just problem-solving methods. That's really it. All right, it's like the scientific method, right? It's just a different flavor of that, but pretty damn similar. If you look at it that way, then Figma output is just one output. If I work like we were talking about Ryan just did, in terms of I'm just going to get in and do these responsive screens. That's another way of problem solving. And if I look at what my job is now, how do I do organizational design, or how do I do team design, or how do I do business process design or team structure design in order to get the right outcomes that I need. But it is still about what is the need and the outcome, and how am I crafting something that gets us there in the best way possible. When I look at the future of design, I think it's people, I'll just say like me, or have that ability to abstract the rules and the theory and apply it in different ways with different tools. When I hear people always say, let's step back to first principles, this is what I think about, right? Because everybody gets so used to working in a certain way, and you say, let's step back. What are we actually trying to accomplish? And that goes back to our first question that I asked you is marketing what you need, or is it something different? And I tend to think that type of thinking is going to be very valuable. So you merge that type of thinking with deep industry knowledge, and that could be a very powerful way that you move forward in terms of what does the future look like. But if I ask a lot of designers in the UX space, and I say, do you think my job is design? They'll probably stutter or stumble or be like, I guess it sort of is. Like, you still direct designers. So yeah, I guess it's like design. But they won't really have thought through what makes my job actual design and what I actually do in that.
I really like that in terms of what you're saying. You're focused on is outcomes. Is that how you get there? There's different ways, different routes. And when it comes back to tools, I think when you look at Figma, so what's your outcome from using Figma? And largely it's about getting to something developers can build from and a set of tokens. So Figma's there to allow you to visually lay things out to get to a point where you can codify the output so someone can build from it. But we don't need to do that anymore. There's Figma as a route to get there, but it's not the only route. I think about how if I was to design a website like 2 years ago, I'd have, because I'm old, I'd have opened up Photoshop or Illustrator, and I'd still use them as my go-to because that's what I used to use. Now I never really used Figma, so I wouldn't go to Figma, but now I probably would go straight to code. I'd find another site that's close to what I want. I'd say, go and build me a copy of that, and then I'll tweak by code what I want.
Do you think it's detrimental? Or sorry, let me step back and start that again. One of the differences I see and why I still think a canvas-based tool like Figma is valuable is I can see complete flows end to end. I can see multiple complete flows end to end to establish patterns. I can see various iterations of one particular screen, so I can do a comparison or a pro and a con, versus when you work directly in code, you are seeing iterations in a sequential format where you have to then judge, based on time, what was this current iteration versus this last one? Do I like it better?
But I could get to iterations in 2 minutes. If I needed to see that full execution of what does that journey look like, it's literally just show me what it looks like. It's that and the time for the AI to then generate it.
You mean for the AI to push it into Figma, or again,
if I wanted,
canvas-based?
yeah, it could be, or to just generate mock-ups of everything. I'm working with Claude at the moment. It quite likes somehow with the 4.7 update, it starts to do mock-ups in browsers, which it seems to like more than I like it doing it.
It's interesting because I guess that works for you. For me, I understand what you're saying, but I'm thinking you're doing it retroactively, whereas I would do it proactively.
I do it at different levels, though. So yes, I might do it retroactively. I might not, though. I might design the workflow, and that quite often when I do specs, I'll do a very detailed spec of this is the step process I want to go through for that flow. I'll then get it to build it. I'll then do something else and completely forget what I told it to build and go back to it and have to get it to teach me how does this thing work, and then I'll recut it because now I can see it in front of me. It's not what I wanted.
I guess this is the thing for me when it comes down to screen-based design. Mm-hmm. Audio-based design, I haven't thought through enough yet. If I take an application that has, let's say, 10 different core journeys in it, right, whatever that is, and I map them out in Figma, one of the things I'm going to look for is what are the repeatable elements and processes that I can make common.
Yep.
I feel that if I were just go in and build things directly in code without having that full ability to look at the entire system, I might build things different or differently on each journey because it might be, oh, what fits the journey at the moment versus what fits the system and what creates the system. So then you can go back to the original design heuristic of learn once, apply everywhere.
So I don't disagree with that. And I think, ironically, because I think we're moving away from it, ironically, I think it's coming back to a more agile way of working where you start by, I've kind of got an idea where I'm going, but it's not too locked down. I start building and I refine. What I get to it is basically a bolt-on approach of functionality and design until I get to a point where it feels cohesive. And then you look back and say, is this actually what I wanted? And I think the benefit we've got of using AI delivery now is that you can say, no, it's not, but I want to keep certain things. Recut the whole thing around these key elements and build it, and you can do that quickly rather than having to throw it all away. So whereas before, in let's say if you design-led thinking, you said I want to lock things down pretty well, if not completely, pretty well up front, and then build off that blueprint, we're saying actually it doesn't matter. And this is what we're talking about last time, is just break it all, rebuild it, and learn as you go.
And so you're still thinking there's a core that you establish at the beginning, or there's some core?
No,
and
I'm saying you might establish the core 75% of the way through it. Just start building and rip it apart.
That's our chaos funnel.
Yeah.
Right. So you can start things in a very chaotic nature.
Yeah. And get quite faster.
So if I talk about loops or recursive elements, I can have my 10 journeys, and then I can recursively set some stopping point, but I can say go through each of these journeys and start to identify the common patterns.
Yeah.
When you identify a common pattern, create a common structure for that, and then take that structure, apply it across those points, and then run the flows again and see if they work.
Or even better, or what I like doing is say I've got 8 different things I've stuck together and I really like one of them, but it was number 7 when I was done it and the other 6 are already done. What happens if I take the approach I took to number 7 and apply it across all of them? How does that change things? Because I might not know the answer to that, but by doing that, there's a load of serendipity that comes out of it. Go, oh, that's made me think about things differently.
It's interesting. What you call serendipity, I see as a hindrance. Not in all cases. But again, when I go back to thinking about broad systems, at what level do you get a better output by seeing the entire system and be able to think like let's say a systems designer, since that's a buzzword that the UX community had a while ago, right? System designer, and then eventually we have service designers and all of this. I just wonder if there is still a delta there, that when you go into vibe coding and you get into point solutions, you lose a level of thinking,
Nervecraft,
and high level abstraction of thinking, so that you can really say, are we creating the system that we want? And like if I think about healthcare and I think about a patient journey, let's say a patient journey in let's do surgery or cancer or something like that. So I have some initial consults, then I have follow-up, then I have like prep for surgery, I have surgery itself, I have post-care, these types of things. If you don't see these in a system, you can design wildly different point solutions for each, which can be horrible for the doctor, the nurses, the patient itself. But if you see it as a whole system, how can you, and that's, what I just described is basically what the US healthcare system is right now, is everything sort of works different, and then God, you get into insurance and ooh.
Is it the difference between how an oil painter approaches things and a sculptor, though, where an oil painter will build things up in layers based on a design to get to where they want to be, whereas a sculptor will take things away to get to a point where they're happy with the final product? I would say that they're just two different routes to get to a similar thing.
Well, they are, but oftentimes great painters aren't always great sculptors, and vice versa.
And I think that might be the crux of it, is that I think I know how I think. I don't necessarily have a fully worked out plan at the start, or even when I do, I quite often change it. So it suits me to be more of a sculptor in this instance.
This is something that as I've progressed in my career, I have learned, which is not everybody fits every job.
Yeah.
I think so many times, I interview a lot of people and I have to turn people down a lot. And I'll meet some people who I'll think like, you're a great designer, but you're not going to fit into the company.
Yeah.
Right. And for various reasons. And I hate it because I know unless somebody is mature enough, which generally takes like a pretty solid amount of reflection within their career, that rejection to them means they aren't good.
Yeah.
Versus you're actually really good. It's not a proper fit.
Yeah.
Right. And there's designers that I've worked with in the past that are absolutely amazing, that I think are just like blow me away with their skill. I would hire them in the Sapient and they would probably fail.
Yeah.
Because they just wouldn't fit within the machine that exists.
I've had that with people before where you've hired them and they've failed and I've had to let them go. And then I've hired them again in different places and they've thrived.
And they work great.
Yeah. Or I've seen them go on. There's one person in particular I thought about, I had to let him go. He just really wasn't working out. He went on and did brilliantly somewhere else. I'm like, good for you. You found the fit for you that made you successful.
Yeah. No, it's something, I guess, because we've been talking for a while and I'm looking for a way to wrap this up. If we think about where we want to go, right? And you asked me what sparks joy, very, living minimalism and things like that. I wonder with all the tools that we have, does this enable more people to find more unique ways that they want to work while being able to produce outcome that is valuable to a mass amount of people, thus, again, creating jobs? I go back to where we started this podcast, not this episode, but way back at the beginning, because it's been, are we afraid for our jobs? And I still think, no, it's just things shift. But does this give us the ability to work in much more personal and unique ways that get us to better outcomes? Or at least gives us more joy as individuals?
Yeah, it's a good thought to end on.
I don't know.
I think we find our value. I think there's a big topic there but to unpick, but I think adding value to U plus N is a good way to justify your existence in the corporate world. If you're adding value to more than yourself, then someone's going to pay for that at some level.
Okay. I'm not ending this yet because I think that is such a good comment that people don't necessarily understand. And maybe this is just designers. I know designers better than anybody else. Your job is to create more value than just you sitting at a desk. And this drives me nuts because it'll be like, I came in and did my job. I made my boxes on a page. Give me my paycheck. It's like, did you create value with those boxes? Or are you just making right angles for the hell of it? And that does drive me a bit nuts, where sometimes people don't recognize their value is to add, not just to be.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And that's a good way to end. Well, we did our extra long podcast.
Dude, this was good,
I think this was we might need to do more of these because it was good to really go deep on a lot of topics and just go broad on things. We didn't even get to the new Apple CEO. Damn it! I wanted to bring that up
next time.
Okay, so there's a new Apple CEO. I forget. We're gonna have to keep topics built up because it was good to have these. But Dunbar, I will see you very soon.